Princess Anyang was innocent and outspoken. At her coming-of-age ceremony, she said of my younger sister, "The Countess of Changal has the bearing of the Wei and Jin dynasties, fond of wandering by candlelight with others. My younger sister's reputation was ruined. Her betrothal was annulled by her fiancé's family, and she had to live in seclusion in a Buddhist hall at a young age. On the day I returned to the capital, the third prince proposed to me in public." Princess Anyang covered her mouth and laughed. "Who would have thought a worn-out shoe like you would have someone who fancies you?" An uproar broke out among the crowd. I slapped her hard, knocking 2 of her teeth out. "Innocent and outspoken. Treating me like a soft persimmon, you must have kicked an iron plate." 1. There were several holes in my battle boots, which I had mended myself. They looked terrible, but I had no new ones to change into. In the northern border, I had struggled just to fill my stomach, with no time to care about such things. 10 li from the capital lay a great river, where father ordered the army to halt. Everyone tidied their gear, bathed, groomed the horses, and polished their armor and weapons. Envoys from the northern border had come to surrender, and the Qin army was to do the emperor proud. I rummaged through my pack. Besides the gifts for mother and my younger sister, there were only a few mended old clothes. Even shabbier than the one I was wearing, a voice came from outside the tent. "The third Prince Xieting, Qingshuang, I've prepared a set of clothes for you, laid on the ground. Hurry and change. The general says we leave at once." When I lifted the tent flap, he was already far away, dressed in black armor. He cut a sharp figure. Who would have thought he was nothing more than a useless prince with just a pretty face? On the ground was a small bundle. Inside a red battle robe and a red hair ribbon. I thought of the night before the great battle, when Xieting had sewn this robe by lamplight, and my heart swelled with warmth. So the robe he'd always held in his hands whenever he had free time was stitched for me. I quietly glanced at my reflection in the river-red robe. Silver armor, hair ribbon fluttering. What a pity the wearer was dark-skinned, wasting such a beautiful outfit. "It looks perfect on you." Xieting's voice came from behind. "I wish I knew how to make shoes. It would be even more perfect then." I smiled and turned back. "Then hurry and learn. I'll be counting on you for the rest of my life." He smiled too, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind and murmuring, "When we return to the capital, I'll beg father to grant us a marriage. We'll wed, and I'll make shoes for you all my life." I laughed and pulled him to my front. He was tall and slender, but I took after father, standing 8 kai tall, beside me. Xieting looked as delicate as a little bird. He looked up at me, his eyes sparkling like starlight, drawing me in so deeply I could not break free. It was not until father came looking, coughing heavily from behind, that he blushed and ran off. Father sighed, and I knew he wanted to urge me to let go. I knew the emperor feared father, and would never allow Xieting to marry me. But what did that matter? Just replace him with another emperor. When you stand atop the mountain, you are the peak. What is there to fear? 2. The emperor sent the crown prince to lead all officials out of the city to welcome the triumphant army and receive the northern border envoys. Princess Anyang actually stood side by side with the crown prince, accepting the obeisance of the northern border envoys. Father sighed quietly again. The crown prince was so muddled, indulging Princess Anyang to such arrogance. The northern border may have surrendered, but it still had the strength to fight. How could it endure such humiliation from a mere girl? Xiao Yi, the northern border envoy, had a fiery temper. He drew his sword on the spot, intent on killing Anyang. The imperial guards beside the crown prince also drew their blades, and the atmosphere grew unbearably tense. The crown prince and Anyang turned pale, stepping back repeatedly. Even I could not help but let out a long sigh. Father stepped forward quickly, restraining the northern border envoy. "You must not be disrespectful in front of His Royal Highness the Crown Prince." The northern border envoy glared furiously at Anyang. The men of the northern border would rather shed blood 5 steps away than suffer humiliation from a woman. At his words, I let out a cold laugh and slowly drew my sword. Xiao Yi was nothing more than a defeated foe of mine. How dare he speak such arrogant words in my presence? Silence fell all around, broken only by the clear, loud clink of the long sword leaving its sheath. Xiao Yi's hand loosened and tightened, tightened and loosened, before finally sheathing his sword. Young Lady Qin is a heroine unyielding to any man. Xiao Yi bows in admiration. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, save for Anyang, whose face flushed and paled in turns. She shot me a venomous glare, then turned and boarded the Crown Prince's carriage. Next came the acceptance of the surrender document and the counting of tributes. Father and Xieting went to the palace to report to the emperor. While I was eager to return home, it was highly suspicious that mother and my younger sister had not come to the city gate to greet me. Before I left, I turned and winked at the third prince, and his face flushed red again. 3. Everything at home was the same: no garden, no rockery, no pavilion. The grand 5-courtyard mansion stood empty, its bareness beyond description. Mother came to greet me with the wet nurse. But my younger sister Moi was nowhere to be seen. The little girl had always been mischievous, so I paid it no mind, ordering my maid Honghua to carry in the gifts for the family. The northern border was bitter and cold, but its furs and jewels were far finer than those in the capital. Mother and the wet nurse buried their heads in sorting through the furs, nudging each other for a long while. Finally, after I coughed once, they told me Moi was not in the capital. The young lady went south of the Yangtze to trade with Master Cousin, the wet nurse said. She's been gone for months. Moi had been betrothed to Jiyu Cheng, the young master of the Earl of Chengping's mansion, since childhood. Was she not supposed to marry him after her coming-of-age ceremony? The marriage is off, Mother said, looking troubled. The Earl of Chengping's mansion wants to annul the betrothal. It turned out that on the day of Moi's coming-of-age ceremony, Princess Anyang had suddenly arrived to congratulate her. During the blessing ceremony, Anyang had pointed and laughed from the audience. The Countess of Changle is free and unrestrained. With the bearing of the Wei and Jin dynasties, she is often seen wandering by candlelight with others. When the Countess of Chengping heard this, she turned and left on the spot, and sent someone to the mansion the next day to annul the betrothal. Mother was furious, but Moi tore up the betrothal contract directly and chased away the messengers from the Earl of Chengping's mansion. Mother, bear it for now. Wait for father and my elder siblings to come back and avenge me. Originally, the coming-of-age ceremony was only for family, and the annulment of the marriage would have been the end of it. But Jiyu Cheng got drunk outside and rambled incessantly, spreading Anyang's words all over the capital. Moi's reputation was utterly destroyed, and she never showed her face in public again. At these words, I flew into a rage. My younger sister Moi loved farming. When the crops in the fields ripened, she often led people to tend them day and night. How could Anyang twist it into something so disgraceful? Even more hateful was the Earl of Chengping's mansion. Once, Moi had saved Jiyu Cheng's life at the racecourse, and the Earl of Chengping's mansion had come to express their gratitude with gongs and drums before the betrothal was settled. Now, for a mere joke, they had betrayed Moi so cruelly. I turned to go and settle the score. Mother and the wet nurse grabbed me desperately. You just returned to the capital. Calm that terrible temper of yours. Anyang has a special status. You must endure this. For Princess Anyang was the orphan of Prince Jing. Years ago, Prince Jing and his son were defeated in battle. Princess Jing died for her country, leaving only a lone daughter. Father had led his troops to reinforce them too late. He had barely managed to rally the defeated soldiers and stabilize the battle situation. But the entire Prince Jing's family was long dead, and an empty tomb stood for them in the imperial mausoleum in the capital. Princess Anyang lived alone in Prince Jing's mansion. and the empress had personally promised her the position of crown princess. Everyone revered her as the descendant of a loyal martyr. Even the princes and princesses gave her 3 points of respect. No wonder mother had stopped me. In those years, Prince Jing and father had cherished each other, as close as brothers. If father found out, he would only scold me. It's for the best that the Earl of Chongping's mansion acted this way and the marriage is off, mother said. With that, I had to suppress my anger. Xie Ting came in person to take me to the palace banquet that night, bringing a pair of embroidered shoes, their Sichuan brocade surface studded with pearls. I had large feet. It must have been hard for him to find such big embroidered shoes anywhere. I tilted Xie Ting's chin up with my finger. One pair of shoes is not enough. Have you thought this through? Xie Ting nodded heavily, blushing bright red. I'll beg father to issue an imperial edict for our marriage later. There is no feast without an ulterior motive, I thought. Xie Ting was bound to be disappointed. Under mother's anxious gaze, I boarded Xie Ting's carriage. Xie Ting's mother had died young, and his maternal grandfather had long since retired. He was an insignificant figure among the princes and grandchildren otherwise. He would not have been sent to the front lines to die. Now that we had returned victorious, there would be countless eyes watching him, waiting for him to make a single mistake to bring him down. I patted his hand reassuringly. If this place will not have me, there is always another place that will. The palace banquet was extremely lavish, with delicacies, pastries and wines served in an unending stream. Who would have thought that not long ago, father had shed tears and killed his beloved war horse to feed his soldiers? I clenched my fists tightly. Father sat opposite me, his stern gaze fixed on me, forcing me to hold back my anger. 5. I sat among a group of noble ladies, utterly out of place. Behind me came their soft laughter and whispered gossip. All they saw was the small square of sky above their heads. All they worried about was a single dress or a piece of jewelry. I drank alone, paying no heed to those harsh jeers. I had my own world, why bother with silly girls? But the crown prince was extremely attentive, pouring wine for me in person, arousing the displeasure of the noble ladies. Father and Xie Ting sat opposite, their faces long. Xie Ting looked at me with bitter resentment, and I could not help but laugh. The noble lady playing the zither stopped. I suppose my humble skills have made elder sister Qin laugh. I beg elder sister Qin to teach me. Sister was enough, adding elder was nothing more than a jab at my advanced age. I smiled and waved my hand. Sister is joking. I merely thought of something else. Anyang, sitting beside the empress, covered her mouth and laughed. Elder sister Qin is a heroine unyielding to any man. Could it be that you are stage frightened? I only know how to kill people. Would you like to see, sister? I smiled and looked back at her. Someone whispered behind me, crude, then a burst of delicate laughter broke out. The empress spoke slowly. Qingshuang, it is rare for everyone to be so happy today. Do not spoil everyone's good intentions. I picked up an apple from the table at random and smiled. I wonder which sister is willing to cooperate. I cannot put on this one-man show alone. Silence fell behind me in an instant. Anyang pointed at the noble lady playing the zither. It was elder sister Gu's idea. Elder sister Jiyu should take the lead. Surnamed Jiyu, the Earl of Chongping's mansion. No wonder. It seemed that in my long absence from the capital, no one remembered what I was like. Miss Gu's face turned white. A palace maid placed an apple on her head as I instructed. I untied my hair ribbon slowly. What fun is this? Let us make it more interesting. Blindfolding myself, I picked up a pair of chopsticks, gestured casually, and shot them forward. The chopsticks pierced the apple straight through and pinned it to Miss Gu's hair bun, and the hall erupted into thunderous cheers at once. Miss Jiyu collapsed to the ground, a foul stench spreading from beneath her. I untied my hair ribbon and glanced around, smiling. Is there anyone else willing to cooperate and amuse everyone with me? No one answered. The empress could no longer hold her smile. The daughter of the Jiyu family has lost her dignity in the palace hall. Leave the palace at once." The palace attendants paid no heed to Miss Gu's sobs, stepping forward to drag her out. I sat down again, unconcerned. She had sought her own fate, jumping out in such eagerness. Now her cries and pleas were useless. The emperor shot me a glance and said to father, "General Qin has labored hard and rendered great meritorious service. I truly do not know how to bestow rewards upon you." Father hurried to his feet and declined, singing praises of the emperor's benevolence and declaring his loyalty at length. The ministers echoed his words in succession, the atmosphere utterly harmonious. Xieting seized the moment and stepped into the hall. "Father Emperor, your son has fallen in love with Miss Qin the eldest. I beg you to grant us a marriage." The emperor's expression remained unchanged, but the crown prince let out a heavy snort. The Qin family held military power over 300,000 troops. How could the crown prince bear to hand such a prize to another? 6. Anyang suddenly spoke up. "Who would have thought a worn-out shoe like you would have someone who fancies you?" Her words had barely faded when an uproar broke out in the hall. Countless strange gazes falling upon me. Anyang tittered and lightly slapped her own mouth. "Oh dear, I've said the wrong thing again. How could I stand this?" I shot to my feet, grabbed Anyang's hair bun in one hand, dragged her roughly into the middle of the hall with a yank, and slapped her hard twice across the face, sending her crashing to the ground. "Since this mouth always spouts nonsense, it deserves a good lesson." Anyang's mouth bled from the slaps, two of her teeth flying out. Chaos erupted in the hall at once. I was about to strike again when father and Xieting rushed over to stop me. Anyang covered her face and screamed, sobbing, "I saw sister wearing a pair of tattered shoes at the city gate, and thought you would not mind a little joke. Why must you humiliate me like this?" Her words were slurred, no longer the delicate and charming tone she had before. Xieting hurried over to support me, secretly splashing a pot of wine all over my body. "Oh my, how drunk you are. Why are you throwing such a drunken fit for no reason?" I shoved Xieting away fiercely and grabbed Anyang. "Why was I wearing tattered shoes? You dare to mock me for the good deed you yourself did. I may be rough, but I am not as shameless as all of you." I shouted my curses, and the faces of everyone in the hall paled in turn. I was cursing these people with their hidden agendas for Princess Anyang's coming-of-age ceremony. The Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Revenue had embezzled military pay from the Ministry of War to hold a lavish celebration. The winter clothes and grain for the soldiers had been exchanged for the jewels in Anyang's hair, the cloud brocade on her body, and her magnificent manner. The army was on the verge of running out of food, unable to even fill their bellies with a single bowl of wild vegetable soup a day. The grain and forage were delayed endlessly. Xieting, the third prince who had come to supervise the army, sent memorial after memorial, yet received no reply. He could no longer say that it would arrive in another 2 days. How bitter the wind in the northern border was. My elder brother and I had chilblains all over our hands and feet, and when we slayed the enemy, blood froze our hands to our swords and spears. The Minister of War of the capital came to the mansion in person to apologize to mother, tears streaming down his old face. Prince Jing had died for his country, and his orphan merely wanted to celebrate her birthday. If the Ministry of War stood in the way, it would surely break the soldiers' hearts. What was more, he could not have stopped it even if he tried. Mother and my younger sister sold all their dowries and every valuable in the general's mansion, sending the old and weak soldiers of the mansion to buy grain everywhere, only then exchanging enough to send provisions to the northern border. After drinking thin rice gruel and wild vegetable soup for half a month, the soldiers finally got to eat dry rice. Mother and my younger sister's righteous act was praised by all. The emperor had no choice but to punish a few low-ranking officials, and hypocritically conferred the title of Countess of Changle upon my younger sister. This was undoubtedly a harsh slap in the face for Enyang, and that was why she had spouted nonsense at my younger sister's coming-of-age ceremony. Enyang was nothing more than a knife in the emperor's hand. Sullying my younger sisters and my reputation was one thing, but what about the soldiers who froze and starved to death in the northern border? What wrong had they done? I still remember the tears in father's eyes when he told someone to lead Juefeng away. That bowl of meat soup froze solid, and father never touched it. Every day, someone lay down and never got up again, defending their country. Yet unable to even get enough to eat and wear. Was it worth it for such a dynasty? 7. I once asked my elder brother this question. He stood with his hands behind his back, gazing up at the distant snow-capped mountains. Do not speak of this again. Father has been loyal to the emperor and devoted to his country all his life. He will not bear the infamy of being a treasonous rebel, who would dare to call Emperor Gaozu of Tang and Emperor Taizu of Song treasonous rebels. If elder brother wishes to be like Emperor Taizong of Tang, I, Qingshuang, am willing to be a foot soldier at your horse's front. My elder brother turned to look at me. What if I am unwilling? Then we will seize the northern border, split the territory and establish our own kingdom. Otherwise, Prince Jing and his son will be a lesson for us. My elder brother fell silent for a long time, then suddenly smiled. Well said. The death of Prince Jing and his son had always been a thorn in father's and my elder brother's hearts. We were now what Prince Jing had been back then. If father and elder brother could not make up their minds, I would make the choice for them. Amid the chaos, Enyang was helped to the inner hall, and several imperial physicians from the Imperial Medical Academy were summoned in succession. Xieting dragged me out of the hall to sober up. And we could still hear Anyang's incessant wailing and crying from afar. Xieting looked at me with worry, and I whispered a few words in his ear to comfort him. Father had already earned all the rewards there were to earn, having achieved such great merit. Any further reward would be the title of king. My reckless behavior today seemed dangerous on the surface, but it was actually safe. Xieting let out a breath of relief and put his arm around my waist. From a distance, it looked as if I was too drunk to stand. Leaning on his shoulder, seeing the crown prince, who had followed us out, turn and leave with a livid face, I smiled to myself. The rest of the matter would be much easier to handle now. Sure enough, when I returned to the hall, Xiao Yi had already proposed to the emperor that I marry into the northern border for peace. His Majesty frowned. Father's face was filled with anger, and Xiao Yi looked at me with a malicious smile. Xieting's face paled. He had just begged for a marriage in the hall, and in the blink of an eye, I was to be sent off for a political marriage. I gave him a gentle nudge. Xieting had just taken a step forward when the crown prince spoke at once. Father Emperor, General Xiao's proposal is excellent. Miss Qin's marriage for peace is a great matter, and it can also demonstrate the royal family's sincerity in ending the war. The emperor was lost in thought when Xiao Yi bowed again. By your majesty's great kindness, your subject has one more request. The third prince has lived in the northern border for a long time and is familiar with the terrain. I beg your majesty to order the third prince to personally escort Miss Qin for the marriage. The emperor pondered for a moment. General Qin has failed to teach his daughter well, and she has lost her dignity in the palace hall. Her merits and faults cancel each other out. Confer upon Qin Qingshuang the title of Princess Anding, and appoint Xieting as the envoy for the peace marriage to escort Princess Anding on her mission to the northern border. The matter was settled. The crown prince had truly done me a great favor. 8. The crown prince waited for me on the way out of the palace. Qingshuang, marry me as a concubine. I will persuade Father Emperor to revoke his imperial edict. Seeing that I paid him no attention, the crown prince laughed. The road to the northern border is long and remote, with bandits running amok along the way. Anything can happen, can it not, Princess Anding? I glanced back at him. Does your highness know the names of my elder brother, my younger sister and I, Tai, Qingxuang, Moi, all are the names of ancient famous swords. When a famous sword is unsheathed, blood flows like a river. Your Highness would not wish to see that, would you? The Crown Prince's face changed color. I walked on, smiling. Qin Qingxuang, fear not the barbarians of the northern border. So why would I fear a mere band of robbers? Rest assured, Your Highness, I will slay any god that stands in my way, and any Buddha that blocks my path. I will not hinder His Majesty's great cause of peace through marriage. I dispatched 10,000 troops to escort Mother out of the capital first. Father fell silent for a long time after hearing this. It is better for her to leave. He had also heard about my younger sister's incident. But my unruly behavior in the palace hall today was so unlike my usual self that his mind was in a mess for the moment. How has Anyang become like this? If Prince Jing were still alive, Father did not finish his words. Back then, he had risked beheading to lead his troops from the southern border to reinforce Prince Jing. Yet he had still been a step too late. If the northern border had not lost several cities in succession, shaking the court and the public, and crying out for a great general to guard the passes, Father would not have fared well either. In the middle of the night, Hongwa tapped lightly on the window lattice. Young lady, a guest has come to visit. Xiao Yi was waiting outside the house. Miss Qin, your subject will set off for home tomorrow. I wonder if the young lady has any messages to send. I entrust the families of all the soldiers of the Qin army to General Xiao's protection along the way. The 10,000 soldiers I had dispatched had already split up into small groups and were waiting ahead. If it were not for fetching these families back, why would we have gone to the trouble of sending a surrender letter all the way from the northern border? The king of the northern border has abdicated, and my lord has already taken over the northern border. The young lady must set off as soon as possible, for delay may bring trouble. I nodded silently. Now, how to persuade father to go with me was the top priority. After Xiao Yi left, Hongwa spoke to comfort me. Young lady, do not worry, the general shares a deep father-daughter bond with you, and he will surely follow your arrangements. I had not yet had time to speak when a figure stepped out from the shadows. Dressed in night clothes, it was Anyang. Her face was still swollen and red, her expression cold and stern, without a trace of the willful and spoiled air she had shown in the daytime. She stared at me with bitter hatred. Why did Xiao Yi come out of your courtyard? Qin Qingxuang, has your Qin army also defected to the northern border? I looked down at Anyang. She resembled Princess Jing, small in stature, with snow-white skin and flower-like features. A typical young woman from the water towns of the Jiangnan region. I still remember how she and Moi had gone everywhere together when they were children, inseparable. When my elder brother, the Crown Prince of Jing's mansion, and I practiced martial arts together, the two of them always made trouble on the side. Back then, Prince and Princess Jing and my parents had even laughed and said that when the children grew up, the two families would intermarry. I still remember hiding and watching with Anyang and Moi, as the Crown Prince of Jing's mansion Xieren and my elder brother blushed to the roots of their necks. Sadly, everything was different now. Prince Jing's entire family was dead. My elder brother had become the king of the northern border. The talk of intermarriage between the two families had vanished like the wind, leaving no trace. Thinking of the past, my heart suddenly softened. AW, will you come back to the northern border with me? My elder brother has not yet taken a wife. I still clearly remember the look of grief on my elder brother's face when he learned that the military pay had been embezzled by Anyang. How could the daughter of a military family not understand the stakes? The little girl he had loved had become unrecognizable, and all the young man's deep affection had been in vain. 9. He is not worthy. Anyang's voice was shrill with anger. My father sent letter after letter begging for help. Why did he not come to the rescue? The emperor even issued an imperial edict to send troops. Why did he still delay? Qin Qingshuang. I originally thought that since your Qin army recaptured the cities my father and brother lost, you had atoned for your sins. I never thought you would defect to the northern border. Tears fell from Anyang's eyes, yet a smile played on her lips. Qin Qingshuang, you can escape by way of this peace marriage. But do you think General Qin and the 50,000 Qin troops outside the city can leave alive? No wonder Anyang even bore malice toward Moi, the son of heaven would also spout lies without a care. It seemed that the lavish coming-of-age ceremony, the embezzlement of military funds, and the plot to destroy the Qin army had all been deliberate. All imperial edicts are filed in the palace, Anyang. The old servants of the palace still live today. If one was willing to investigate, there were no secrets in this world, even if an imperial edict had truly been issued back then. Your father and brother would still have met their end. She had been far too sheltered by Prince Jing, unable to see the undercurrents churning beneath the surface. Instead, she had become a knife in the hands of her father's killer, used utterly and completely. Prince Jing had been the late emperor's youngest son, and he had held military power in his hands. His son had been wise, and unmatched in bravery. Had they pacified the northern border, their reputation would have grown even greater. The emperor had no more titles to bestow upon them. If they had not died, the emperor and the crown prince would never have slept soundly. Anyang left with a pale face. She was favored now. It would not be difficult for her to quietly uncover the truth. Though I had long since made plans for father and the 50,000 Qin troops, Anyang would still be a trouble if she interfered. We had grown up together. Bound by affection, I could only hope she would not make things difficult for me. Anyang had barely left when Xieting snuck over as well. I sighed. Whose house had guests coming in waves in the middle of the night? Qingshuang, let's avenge your younger sister. Xieting's face was flushed, his dog-like eyes bright and shining, making my head spin. Let's put a sack over Jiyu Cheng's head. He triumphantly held up the sack in his hand. I could not help but laugh. A dignified prince, acting so childish, when we really snuck to the Wenhua Lu where Jiyu Cheng was staying. He grew a little worried. Qingshuang, won't this get you into trouble? It was just a sack. Xieting wanted to make me happy, and I was willing to humor him, even if it did cause trouble. So what? Xieting had been raised by the women of the Deep Palace since he was a child. He had small cleverness but no great wisdom, and acted without any plan, yet a pure and innocent heart was the rarest thing in the world, and I was willing to shield him from all storms. We dragged Jiyu Cheng out of his bed. Put the sack over his head. I broke his 2 legs, and Xieting threw him into a stinking ditch by the roadside. If Moi had not saved him back then, he would have been trampled into pulp by a spooked horse. There was no greater betrayal than repaying kindness with ingratitude. 10. After our misdeed, Xieting pulled me and we ran all the way back to the general's mansion, looking at his stunningly handsome face, flushed from running. I pressed him down on the couch with one hand and did what I had long wanted to do. What propriety, justice, integrity and honor. They could not bind me, nor could they bind him. Xieting hid under the quilt and snickered. I pressed a soft kiss to his face. Xieting, we will live to be 100, grow old together, and never be separated. Once, I had been consumed by anxiety, fearing that the fate of Prince Jing's family would befall mine, now that mother and Moi were gone. I had no more worries holding me back. As long as we left this imperial city, the sea would be wide enough for the fish to leap, and the sky high enough for the birds to fly. If he did not leave me, I would never abandon him. Father was furious. He had guessed I would use the peace marriage to escape. But he had not expected me to be so bold and reckless, openly luring a prince into the mansion. I have failed to teach you well. His Majesty was right to punish you. Father ordered me to kneel, intending to fetch the family discipline to teach me a lesson. Before I could move, Xieting knelt first. It was I who was overcome by lust and seduced Qingshuang. She was forced. Father was so angry he laughed, waved his hand and left. Get out of here and go on the peace marriage at once. Leave tomorrow. I pulled Xieting up. He was still a little flustered. The fool, father had openly accepted his Neil, which meant he had already accepted him. In the end, Xieting left with a smile. As the peace marriage envoy, he had much to do. I urged him to keep everything simple, so we could set off as soon as possible. Even with everything kept simple, we only set off 7 days later. In the meantime, I heard that when Jiyu Cheng had been found by the night watchman and sent back to the Earl of Chengping's mansion that night, he had been delirious with a fever and could not identify his attackers. The Countess of Chengping had wept and wailed everywhere, saying I must have been taking revenge. I smiled. Breaking only his 2 legs was letting him off easy. He still has to repay the life-saving grace Moi bestowed upon him back then. At those words, the Earl of Chengping's mansion fell silent at once. A life-saving grace could only be repaid with one's life. I had dared to beat Princess Anyang in front of the Emperor and the Crown Prince. Why would I fear a worthless dandy with no official position or title? On the day we left the capital, it was still the Crown Prince who saw us off. I heard the Emperor had found a new beauty and indulged in the harem day and night. How could he care about a titular princess's peace marriage? The Crown Prince's face was exceptionally dark, and he said not a word, watching the peace marriage procession leave with his eyes. Father led the Qin army with us, 10 li out of the capital. I headed north all the way, while he turned west to suppress the bandits in the 10,000 Great Mountains. Before we parted, father tapped my forehead. You girl, you girl. He let out a long sigh and rode away. Father could not get past the moral barrier in his heart, but he would soon understand. 11. Anyang waited for me at the long pavilion, her eyes a little swollen, her clothes unusually elaborate and gorgeous. Seeing her with her hair styled in a married woman's bun, and then seeing the eunuchs and palace maids waiting outside the pavilion, how could I not understand? Surely Anyang had uncovered the truth about her family's extermination and chosen her own way to take revenge. A father seizing his son's fiancée, how long could the Crown Prince endure that? Anyang was truly foolish to take this path. Anyang rushed into my arms in a hurry, and I could feel her scalding tears soaking through my clothes. The Crown Prince's men planned to ambush us at Black Wind Stronghold, and the Emperor has also sent a large army, she whispered in my arms. And a cold little thing was stuffed into my lapel, for Brother Tai. Even when the procession had traveled far away, I could still see Anyang's figure, so delicate and frail. I wondered how she had maneuvered between the father and son of the royal family, allowing father to lead his troops out of the capital smoothly. Though those bandits were men I had sent to pose as such, it still took a great deal of effort to get father and the Qin army out of the capital as soon as possible. I lowered the carriage curtain and took out the thing Anyang had stuffed into my hand, a tiny golden dragon, which looked quite old. I turned it over and over, but could see no clue. Xieting spoke up instead. This looks a little like the legendary dragon talisman. So it's true that every emperor has a special golden dragon guard. So that was it. The late emperor's intended heir had been Prince Jing all along, when the new emperor had ascended the throne back then. Prince Jing had been leading troops outside the capital. Moreover, Prince Jing had been the legitimate son of the empress. If he had not died, the emperor would never have been at peace. The empress and the crown prince had spoiled Anyang and promised her the position of crown princess, no doubt also for the sake of this golden dragon guard. I looked at Xieting. Xieting, you are also a prince of the royal family. Do you want this golden dragon guard? Xieting stared at me in a daze and slowly shook his head. This dragon talisman is enough to prove that your father ascended the throne illegitimately. If I give it to Qin Tai, your father and brother will have only death to look forward to. Have you made up your mind? I stared at Xieting intently. Originally, The Crown Prince's men were sent to supervise the army in the northwest. Later, the Crown Prince spoke up and had me sent instead. A useless prince like me is not as good as a useful subordinate in their eyes. Xieting forced a bitter smile and did not look at me. Qingshuang, I'm just a good-for-nothing. I can't write. I can't fight. Following you, I'll only hold you back. I leaned forward and silenced his next words with a kiss. A prince born in the cold palace, who had managed to grow up safely, that in itself was his greatest skill. There was no need for him to belittle himself. Xieting did not respond to me. Though his temperament was soft, he was also sensitive. How could he have hidden the trace of killing intent in my heart just now? I murmured in his ear, Xieting, in this life, you live as my man and die as my ghost. I will never let you go. If you betray me, I will surely kill you. 12. When did I start to like Xieting? He had blocked a hidden arrow for me, mended clothes for me, and on a snowy day, I carried him back to the camp, our blood freezing us together. I suddenly felt ashamed. How could I not trust him? Xieting turned his head away, tears glistening in his eyes. I had hurt his heart after all. I know. The only one you like is Xieren. He was so good. How could a good-for-nothing like me compare to him? It's only right that you look down on me. Xieren, the late crown prince of Jing's mansion. Why would Xieting think I liked Xieren? Qingshuang, do I really look that much like Xieren? Eniang said. That bastard Eniang, even though she had learned the truth of those years and let father go, she still could not resist causing trouble for me. I forced Xieting to turn back to me. I went to the southern border with father when I was 12. Xieren and I were one in the south and one in the north. We never even met. Who said I liked Xieren? Eniang said that your two families talked about intermarriage back then. Xieting's eyes were filled with tears. I was so angry I laughed. Even if there was talk of intermarriage, it was between Qin Tai and Eniang, Xieren and Moi. What does that have to do with me? Moi had later become engaged to the Earl of Chengping's mansion anyway. It had all just been a joke. Eniang had deliberately caused trouble, most likely to get revenge for me slapping her in public, with so many petty schemes. She must be no less skilled at scheming against the one on the dragon throne. Everyone had their own aspirations, and we all had our own paths to choose. The most important thing now was to coax Xieting well. After a lot of kissing, hugging, and lifting him up high, Xieting finally left the carriage happily. Watching Xieting ride his horse back and forth happily from the carriage, I could not help but sigh. Ignorance truly was bliss. Of the peace marriage procession, only 2,000 men were mine, and I also had to protect the hundreds of craftsmen and their families traveling with us. It was still unclear how many men the emperor and the crown prince had planted among us. According to Eniang, the crown prince had arranged for men to intercept and kill us ahead. Though I could not trust her words completely, I still had to be on my guard. I took out the map and examined it. There were 2 or 3 places where an ambush could be set. Since father was suppressing bandits by imperial edict, why not suppress all of them together? I sent an urgent report to father, arranging to meet him at the several circled locations. I gathered my 2,000 elite soldiers and urged Xieting to follow slowly from behind. Speed was the key to war. We would strike when the enemy least expected it. This place was not far from the capital, and Xieting was a prince. Without me, the peace marriage procession would be safe and sound instead. Xieting watched me leave and said nothing. That was just the way he was. At critical moments, he quietly held down the fort, and even his little tantrums were saved for insignificant times. How could I not love him? 13. We traveled day and night, and before we reached Black Wind Stronghold, we encountered the Crown Prince's men on the road. How could a motley crew compete with the elite soldiers who had fought side by side, blade to blade, on the battlefield? I led my 2,000 men and slaughtered them like cutting melons and vegetables, when suddenly another troop charged at us from the side. Though all the attackers had black scarves covering their faces, I could still recognize from the style of their weapons that these were the regular troops of the Imperial Guard camp on the outskirts of the capital. The emperor sought to exterminate the Qin clan. He did not even bother to hide it anymore. I feared my elder brother would face moves against him too. I could not help but laugh. Surely father would finally give up his foolish loyalty now. Hongwu drew the signal fireworks and shot them into the sky. The Qin army, lying in ambush nearby, emerged one after another and surrounded the Imperial Guard camp. Father rode forward and looked at the leader. Old Pang, brother for over 30 years, you too have come to kill me. Father's voice trembled slightly, revealing his immense agitation. I stood silently behind him. Uncle Pang had been our martial arts master when we were children. He had personally forged the bodies and taught the skills of me, my elder brother, and the crown prince of Jing's mansion. The leading black-cloaked man pulled down his face covering, revealing a familiar face. Streaked with grey at the temples and weathered by time, 10 years apart, he looked even older than father. Surely life in the capital had not been easy for him either, clad in armor. I bowed and clasped my fists on horseback. We had been master and disciple. After all, after this bow, swords, and spears would likely meet. Qingxuang has grown so much, Uncle Pang sighed. Second brother Qin, you are also a man who leads troops into battle. A royal order is hard to defy. I can let you go. But what of the brothers behind me? I smiled and raised a hand. Brothers, look around you. Do you stand a chance if you fight? Lay down your weapons, and you shall live. At my gesture, archers on all sides narked their arrows, ready to shoot. Uncle Pang let out a long sigh and dropped his broadsword. Following his lead, the soldiers of the Imperial Guard camp cast aside their weapons one after another.
Inner quarters for her whole life. Moi tugged at my sleeve. Elder sister, elder sister. I knew exactly what she wanted to say. The little minx with her tail in the air. I kicked my young cousin. If you have something to say, go tell father yourself. Wasting your breath on me is useless. Lin Feng did not even look annoyed at being kicked, grinning widely to reveal a set of white teeth. Xie Ting leaned over. Little sister, I avenged you. I broke that scoundrel's legs. Thank you, brother-in-law. Moi smiled sweetly. Xie Ting's heart bloomed with joy at the call of brother-in-law. So much so that he muddledly gave away a pair of jade pendants he had hidden for ages, preparing to gift me for my birthday, 15, with grain in hand. More and more people joined us. Moi and Lin Feng followed Xie Ting all day to handle logistics, keeping everything in perfect order. I led the Qin army to suppress bandits all the way. Taking every spoil we could find, sweeping through the land, we reaped a rich harvest. The common people along the way were grateful, and even more flocked to join us. By the time my elder brother came to meet us in person, I had hundreds of thousands of followers behind me, and countless small towns had surrendered at the mere news of our arrival. We had fierce generals in abundance and wise advisors without end. All was ready. Only the east wind was needed. I presented the dragon talisman to the crowd. I beg elder brother to raise the righteous army, eliminate the traitors, and return a clear and bright world to the people. With the dragon talisman in hand, my elder brother would command the Golden Dragon Guard and the treasure left by the late emperor. What was more, the entire northern border was under his control, and all the grassland tribes had sworn allegiance to him sincerely. News arrived from the capital. The emperor had died. The crown prince had ascended the throne, and Anyang had transformed from a concubine of the late emperor into the favorite consort of the new emperor overnight. Rumors spread that the new emperor, flying into a rage for the sake of his beauty, had stormed the palace and killed his father, unfilial and disloyal. Other rumors claimed the emperor had died of poison, and the poisoner was none other than his current favorite consort, Anyang. Enraged, the new emperor unleashed a reign of terror, executing anyone who dared to speak of the rumors. In an instant, heaven and people were both angered. Feudal lords from all over the land raised their banners, declaring themselves the righteous army, and issued proclamations to punish the new emperor. Heaven's timing, geographical advantage, and human unity all aligned perfectly. My elder brother's march south was perfectly justified. unwilling to fight against his old comrades. Father stayed in the northern border with Moi, Lin Fong, and mother, who had arrived earlier, arranging for the people to reclaim wasteland and build water conservancy projects. I served as the vanguard, conquering east and west, winning every battle and taking every pass, advancing like a hot knife through butter. My elder brother led the main army forward slowly behind me. Xie Ting was in charge of comforting the people and reappointing officials in all regions. Everyone was busier than ever. But fortunately, Xie Ting had recruited many talented people earlier, so we never lacked for hands. In just half a year, all the feudal lords were defeated, and half the country fell into our hands. During this time, the new emperor sent envoys to seek peace, willing to split the country equally with my elder brother. But when the envoys arrived, they were besieged by the people, pelted with rotten vegetables and leaves from head to toe. The people of many towns along the way even opened their city gates voluntarily to welcome our army. Their hearts and minds all belonged to my elder brother. Another half-year passed, and our army reached the very gates of the imperial city. 16. I led my troops to surround the imperial city completely, waiting for the final moment to arrive. Surrounded by numerous civil and military officials, my elder brother rode forward. The inexperienced young man who had left the capital all those years ago now exuded the majesty of an emperor. Open the city gates. Those who surrender shall live, my elder brother said calmly. The soldiers shouted in unison, open the city gates. Those who surrender shall live. Two figures suddenly appeared on the high city wall. The new emperor, dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe, wordlessly took Anyang's hand and leaped off the wall with her, amid the gasps of the crowd. Just as they were about to hit the ground, he suddenly rolled over and shielded Anyang with his body. They had been childhood sweethearts after all. He must have once loved Anyang with all his heart and sincerity. In his final moment, he still let her go. Anyang survived with a broken leg and was placed under house arrest in the former Prince Jing's mansion. I went to see her and found her lower abdomen slightly swollen. She was clearly pregnant, miraculously unharmed by the fall from such a height. Seeing me, Anyang raised her hand to protect her belly. I hear there are high-yield rice seeds in Anan. Would you be willing to go there to find them? When one stands in a high position, there are always times when one has no choice, even if Qin Tai agreed. The ministers would never allow Anyang to give birth to this source of trouble. Only by going to another country could she and her child be safe. I saw Anyang out of the city. As we parted, she asked me, what about you? Can you protect Xie Ting? I smiled and nodded. He was my man, I would plan everything for him. Returning to the general's mansion, I found Xie Ting in the study, practicing calligraphy in a leisurely manner. He was truly the most unread prince I had ever met, his calligraphy atrocious beyond belief. He glanced behind me and pressed his lips together. The fool, overthinking again. Xie Ting, have you ever seen the sea? I smiled. Taking the brush from his hand and circling the few characters that were half-decent, I asked Moi to build a fleet. I want to see the dwarfish WA people across the sea, and the red-haired, green-eyed Western foreigners. Xie Ting's eyes suddenly lit up, his gaze burning, his smile bright and vivid. Then you have to teach me to swim first, or I won't go with you. Silly boy, if a storm really came, what use would swimming be? I laughed, threw down the brush, and reached out to untie his sash. All right, I'll teach you now. I've had the hot spring pool tidied up. We have plenty of time to learn slowly. Xie Ting blushed, pulling out the hairpin from my hair. The spring breeze blew, sending the papers on the table fluttering like butterflies. The hot spring water was smooth, the beauty like jade. To have this in life, what more could one ask for?